Hey guys, welcome to Bookish English. Today, we're going to have a longer class where we're going to work on our pronunciation and speaking. Like a native, it's not just about the right pronunciation of words. It's also about understanding native speakers who don't speak really fast, who tend to swallow sounds. And sometimes, when you come to a new country, or even if you travel to another part of an English-speaking country, you encounter so many different people speaking in a weird way. This video is for you to understand everyone. Now, this is a compilation of my best classes, so make sure you have a notebook. Make sure you're all ears. Let's do it. Let's learn to speak like a native. The first trick. Sometimes we say, I should have done this. Normally, like at school, they would teach us to contract things, so they would teach us to say, I should have done this. But again, when we're speaking English and when we try to sound like native speakers, the rule of thumb here, and rule of thumb is like what you normally would do, is to sit down and relax. And when you sit down and relax, you just don't want to speak like this. Shoot up. It's a little, well, it sounds natural, but still, it could be done easier. So, what is an easy way? I should have done this. Try it. Just try pronouncing it yourself. Maybe we should have done this online. Again, another trick with English. Whenever you hear something, try pronouncing it yourself. Because just because you hear it doesn't mean you're going to use it. You're going to use it if you pronounce it, and if your muscles are like, oh, this is the way it works. It's like exercise. The more you exercise, the better you are at what you're doing. So, pronounce with me. I should have done this. Shoulda. Okay. Now we're talking about English that you can use in your daily life. We're not talking about English that you're going to use in the classroom or when you're passing an interview to Harvard. When you're speaking academically, you'll be like, I should have done this. But when you're like with your friends, when you're in the environment, I should have done this. I should have done that this morning. The same with could have and would have. I could have done this. I would have done this. Why show this like dance to you? Because again, English is very optimized for like singing. When I was doing a lot of singing classes, my singing teacher would tell me that I sing a lot better in English just because, you know, the way people speak English, it's like a song. They connect words, and it adds some rhythm. So, practice with me. I should have done this. I could have done this. I would have done this. The next word is a preposition. First of all, it's not off. It's a. We're going to show some transcription here, so it's not this. It's not off. Cup of tea. But if you want to sound like a native speaker, if you listen to how they're saying this, they're saying it kappa tea. And this is very British. Cup of tea. Okay, American. A lot of stuff. Kapati. It's no longer off. It's just a cup of tea. Cup of tea. Lot of stuff. It's got a lot of stuff. So whenever you have off in your phrase and the next word starts with a consonant, there is a big, big chance that a native speaker would replace of with ah. A lot of stuff. I did a lot of stuff here too. A lot of water, a lot of trash, a lot of clothes, not a lot of clothes. If we talk about reductions, there are words that sound with an H, like him, her, he, have. And if they are unstressed in a sentence, and remember, in English, when we're pronouncing something like a sentence, we have a stress that goes on a particular word. There is no stress in every single word. So, when these words go unstressed, people tend to just omit the letter H and the sound that it corresponds to. Example, I tell her about that. Very kind of an artificial, non-artificial way, native speaker way, I tell her about that. So, we don't even have two words here. We don't have tell and we don't have her. We have one word, teller, teller, teller. Instead of I tell him, I say I tell him. Again, new word. I tell him, I told her, nah, I told her. Let's look at more examples. Was he there? Just try yourself. Was he there? Say it in a native speaker way. Was he there? Was he there? We went to a party yesterday. Was he there? Why was he there? And once you see it, like now you understand. Like, if I showed this phrase to myself maybe 7 years ago, I would be like, what is she saying? Just because I didn't know all the tricks. And now you know them. Write them down. Don't forget about them. At first, he was surprised. Thirsty instead of first heat. At first, he was angry. What have we done? What have we done? I saw him yesterday. Saw him yesterday at the bank. Faster, smoother, more natural. Let's move further. Let's talk about intonation. Oh, it is so difficult, which means, yeah, it's difficult. But when you say, oh, it's so difficult, sarcasm, it is not difficult at all. Again, the way you stress words, the way you phrase something, is really, really important. Now, let's make a quick exercise. What do I mean here? Yeah, the movie was really scary. It's number 1. Number 2, yeah, the movie was really scary. What did I mean in both sentences? First sentence, that it was scary. Second sentence, that it wasn't scary at all. In one of my previous videos, we talked about assimilation, and if you haven't watched that video, the link will be down below. Please don't forget to watch the whole series about how to speak English fast and understand native speakers. It's really important. And the example of assimilation was don't you versus don'tcha or meet you versus meetcha. That was assimilation. Today, I'm going to talk about some other examples that are maybe not so obvious. Contraction of the phrase, what are you? Sounds like watcha. What are you doing? Instead of, what are you doing? You say, what you're doing. What are you talking about? What you're talking about. What are you saying? What you're saying. Contraction of, what have you? Sounds like watcha. What you've been doing. What you've been up to. Watcha is also a contraction of the phrase, what do you? What do you think? What you think. What do you want to do now? What you want to do now. And watcher is also a contraction of what you do, what you got to do. Instead of do what you got to do, you say do what you got to do. Again, this is something that you learn as you go. They all sound like watcha, but you will guess the meaning from the context, and you're going to get there. It's not that difficult, but once you know the trick, it makes it easier. Something that happened to me, well, I would say recently, maybe a couple of years ago, when I was babysitting my aunt's dog. I started to talk to a lot of Americans who had a dog as well, because I was walking my dog, and I hear people say, "Who's a good boy? Good boy." Or another phrase, "Who's a good girl?" So basically what I heard there, I heard them saying not good boy, but who's a good boy. Nobody said that. They took the word good and replaced the D with the first letter of a word that followed, who's a goop boy, good boy, who's a good girl. And if you pronounce it the way they did, it was like, who's a good boy, who's a good girl. And I was like, am I hearing something? And I was like, yes, I'm hearing something. And this is the way I learn accents. I just listen to people and I'm like, wow, this sounds confusing. This is not the way it's written. Sometimes I would just ask them to repeat because I want to understand what's going on. And they go on and explain to me the way they pronounce it. And it's not a rule, guys. So whatever we're talking about in my videos about the pronunciation, these are not rules. This is just something that I notice when I walk around California and I hear people speak. When I travel, and these are just notes that I'm sharing with you. Again, when we're talking about learning a language and understanding others, it's all about, first of all, it's all about understanding. Because when you know these tricks, you're able to understand them better. But also, like, if you decide someday that you want to adopt some of the accents, like I did when I first came to the US, I was ordering coffee and I said hot coffee, and they gave me cold coffee. Because you pronounce hot this way, not hot. You say hot, and, I had to drink cold coffee in New York, and it was kind of cold. It was May, and I was a little upset. I told myself, I gotta learn. I gotta learn the American accent. I think my accent has changed completely since I moved to the US, and it's changing every year. It's changing because I encounter more and more people. I encounter more and more situations where people would say something, and I would be like, wow, this is weird. We need to stop here. I need to analyze this. So, let's move into the video and continue with whatever I just mentioned. Why do native speakers do this? Why do they say good boy, good girl? Again, the rule here is that they just want to speed up everything, and English is this great language to sing in. So whenever you're singing, you just want to omit sounds. You want to omit something that stops you, something that makes you kind of stop and take a breath. You just want to connect everything. So, good boy is a little like good girl, but if you say good boy, it's like one word. Goodbye. Easy, right? This is why people do that. This is called assimilation or sound change in the English language, and it is quite common. Another example of sound change is white paper, paper. So I kind of say white paper, but because I'm connecting, it's even like one sound. It's not white paper. White paper is British. British English is this formal kind of language where you try to pronounce more sounds than Americans do, and white paper is very British. White paper is very American. Another great example, speedboat. We don't, Americans, I guess, don't say speedboat. I don't say speedvote, I say speedboat. Speedboat. But then it's connected. A speedboat. The speedboat. So you see what's happening here? I just want you to realize that it is happening because it will help you understand native speakers a lot better. And because of the way the different sounds are made in our mouths, sometimes we get a completely different situation. Let me give you an example. I can go now. And it sounds like I can go. So we kind of add another G at the end of the word. Can, I can go. Can't buy, I can buy. Instead of saying can buy, I say can buy. I can buy this. You can buy new ones. Again, can buy is just a lot of movement that has to happen in my mouth. But if I say Kim buy, I'm already shaping my mouth in order to pronounce the sound B. And it's can buy. So yeah, I know they don't teach that at school because there is no formal rule on when you replace the sound N with them. This is something you learn on this YouTube channel. So if you're not yet subscribed, you know what to do. Green Park. It's Green Park, the way it's pronounced. Do you want to take a walk at Green Park on Monday? On Monday? Are you joining me for a class on Monday? Some other things we talked about in my previous videos on how to sound like a native speaker and speak English faster. If you haven't watched them, you totally have to watch them. The links will be down below. They're really important for anyone who's learning English because if you don't want to speak fast, at least you want to be able to understand other people. We talked about reduction, where sounds disappear. I just wanted to remind you of a couple of examples, because sometimes when letters T and D appear between two consonants, they tend to disappear. Let me give you some examples. That was the worst job I've ever had. But I will say, that was the worst job I've ever had. You see, to disappeared. Where's job? Where is it? I don't know. Just one person came to the party. Where's a tea? I don't know. Just one. Let me give you a couple of last examples that will blow your mind. Handbag. It's a handbag, but N and D are replaced by NM. So D disappears because of reduction, and then N is replaced by M because of sound change, assimilation. So handbag. D disappears, and N is changed into M. Him back. Who taught you that? I don't know. Same with false cathedral. Again, what happens here? To disappears because of reduction, but then N is replaced with them because of assimilation. Samples cathedral. It's not St. Paul's Cathedral in Great Britain, it's St. Paul's Cathedral. But America, simple as cathedral. The next tip. Open your mouth when you try to speak English fast. When you hear native speakers speak English fast, you are tempted to just speak fast, but the way it works with native speakers is that they've done it so many times, they pronounce so many sounds, it comes naturally. When you try to speak fast without enough practice, we tend to eat sounds. I made this mistake again when I came to the US. I wanted to sound more natural, and I started just speaking as fast as I could. Normally, I'm a fast speaker. Even when I'm speaking Russian, people complain on my Russian channel that I speak too fast. Maybe you complain? You don't complain. You guys are the nicest audience I've ever had. You never complain. You only thank me. But I know I can be too fast sometimes. The thing is, in some cultures, like Russian, well, I would say in some Asian cultures, you don't open your mouth the way Americans do. And sometimes it is crucial, like pen and pan, two completely different words. You see how I open my mouth when I say pan? That makes a huge difference. Bad versus bed. Two completely different words again. If you mess it up, if you forget to open your mouth, people will probably guess the meaning of the word just from the context. But sometimes the context is also confusing, and you don't want to confuse people too much all the time. So, open your mouth. Bed versus bad. Bed, bath, pack versus peck. Let's practice some listening skills. I'm going to say a word and you need to guess which word it is. Which one came first? And beg, bag, pat, pet. Completely different words. Present perfect versus past simple. Another thing that kind of differs from British English to American English. But basically what happens in British English, they tend to use present perfect more. In Great Britain they say, I've just arrived home, which is kind of grammatically more correct than using past simple, because when you say I've just arrived, that means you're stating the fact that you're at home, and present perfect would be the perfect tense here. In America, again, people tend to simplify everything, and Americans will say, I just arrived. It's faster, right? In terms of grammar, I would say, well, it works. But still, when we use past simple, we want to add more details. We're telling a story, but we're not stating our current state. We state actions in the past. With present perfect, we kind of want to emphasize that we're at home. So in this very case, I would say present perfect is more correct, but Americans use past simple. That doesn't mean that if you are learning American English, you don't have to learn present perfect. Oh, and by the way, guys, if you're still confused about the tenses, if you need more information on tenses, if you need tables, if you need explanations, if you need additional videos from me, I have the whole workbook. The focus is on the English language, but we have a whole section on English tenses. I try to explain them in the easiest way possible because I know how important they are and how confusing they can be. We also have a lot of tables that will help you learn more idioms, vocabulary, and necessary grammar. The link will be down below. It costs $7.95, and I think it's a great chance for you to have some materials while you go through my videos and learn English. Check it out, my English language workbook. And last, but not least for today, exaggerate. Americans exaggerate everything, I guess. While American culture is like, everything is so bright here, everything is so amazing, people just, I don't even know. When they're positive, they're really positive. They tend to be less negative, and I kind of like it. Again, coming from a culture where people are not really showing their emotions too much. But the thing is, when I came to the US, when everyone is smiling, when everyone is like, oh my God, your dress is amazing, that just helps me get through the day. I feel happier. I don't know. It depends on the kind of person you are, but I personally like it. And if you want to sound more American, this salad is not good. This salad is absolutely the best salad I've ever eaten in my whole life. This is the best thing I've ever tasted before. This video is not just a good video. Oh my God, this was the best video I've ever seen in the past few years. Oh my God, Liza, you're amazing. Do this in the comments. Another thing that's kind of confusing, When you text someone on the phone and you've been texting each other for a couple of months and they call you friend. Again, in a culture where I come from, this is unacceptable. Like, friends are people who you hang out with for years, who you trust, who you've seen many, many times. Again, it's just another cultural aspect that you have to understand. You don't necessarily have to use it, but just understand that this is the way it works most of the time in the US. You know, accents are beautiful. You can speak with whichever accent you prefer, British, Canadian, your own, maybe some Russian accent to make a difference on this channel. Maybe we should teach this. But anyways, you choose whatever you want to do, it's up to you. But I think it's really important to understand what native speakers do when they speak English. Because once you know what they're doing, it's easier for you to understand them. So, switch on your ears, write things down, because some of them you'll be like, oh my God, really? That's exactly what they're doing. Why haven't I noticed that before? The exact same thing happened to me when I started studying the American accent. When I started exploring, what are those people doing out there? What are they doing with their mouths and lips? What is going on? So today, we're going to talk about that. Continue watching this video, but before we get into the topic, please hit subscribe and hit the like button. Okay, did you hear a browse button? Button. And this is the first thing we're going to talk about today. It is the glottal stop. So, if you watched my previous videos on this topic, and if you haven't watched them, the links will be down below. Please watch them because they are really interesting, really exciting, and they're performing really well on this channel. So, the glottal stop, I think T, is one of the most difficult sounds in English because it has so many variations in different accents and dialects, and just the way people pronounce it. In one of my last videos, we talked about the word beautiful, which is actually pronounced as beautiful. It's almost a D that is almost an R. It's beautiful, you know. I'm using this mic so you could hear all the nuances. Beautiful. I think it's almost R, not penny beautiful, but beautiful. And then, what about water? It's water. It's not water. Water would be British. Water is what Americans say. Water. So again, I would have been confused if I heard this word maybe 20 years ago when I was just starting to learn English. If I learned water and then somebody says water, I would be like, what? What does that mean? And the same with letter. And then Americans say letter. Letter. But this was T changing into D or R. Now we're going to talk about T kind of disappearing and evolving into this glottal sound. The glottal stop is not officially recognized by the English language rules. It's just something that you learn from videos like this. If you're wondering, how do you actually pronounce it? What is this glottal stop? If you say, uh-oh, so something that comes in between those two sounds is this glottal stop. This kind of sound as if somebody's holding you by the neck. This is the glottal stop. For example, let's say the word button. Here you go. Initially, you would pronounce button with a T, but native speakers would often use the glottal stop here. So it's button, button. You know, just try and mimic this. That's the only way I can explain. So, first train with O, this glottal stop, and then you just add it into the word button. Todd, hit the button. What button? There are some other examples. This glottal stop is both used in American and British English, but I feel like the British people use it more. If you're studying a British accent, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that mountain is very British. This is when I'm replacing T with the glottal stop. Mountain, elf, curtain, very British. Cotton, and where can we say curtain? Curtain. The curtain rises. It kind of disappears, but it's still kind of there. So when we pronounce the regular T, my tongue would touch my teeth, the back of my teeth. When I'm kind of speeding everything up and trying to sound like a native speaker, I would say curtain. So my tongue kind of goes there, but it stops before it hits my teeth. It's curtain. But if I want to sound more British, I'll say curtain. In the British version, my tongue doesn't even make an attempt to hit my teeth. Another example, forgotten. Europe place. T for the glottal stop. Forgotten. Again, there's no rule where you replace T with a glottal stop. Even in the word collateral, you replace it. You just listen to people around you. If you're in Great Britain, you would just hear people using it more and more. If you're in the US, you will sometimes hear people using it. But my advice would be to learn that it exists. And then, once you're in the language-speaking environment, once you're in the US or Great Britain, just, depending on where you are, listen to people around you, and you will eventually, I guess, just mimic people around you. That's what happens to me all the time. But in California, I kind of speak like Californians. When I'm in Great Britain, I adapt. It depends on the way your brain works. My brain works by mimicking everything. But yeah, glottal stop, here you go. Now you know what it is. By the way, guys, if you want more explanations about how people talk about where your tongue goes, or how your mouth opens, or how your muscles should work, I'm not a specialist in that. I'm more focused on describing what's going on with the sound. But my friend Mania, who's originally from Russia, but no one could ever tell that, well, I can't tell that, has mastered the skill of explaining how to open your mouth to sound like an American. He has the whole course on a platform called Language Rep, which I co-founded. If you want to check out this course, I highly, highly recommend it. One of my friends recently took it, and he was at home with me one of the classes. He listened for 6 minutes of the class, and he said, I now know more than I learned at school about how to open my mouth. And instantly, his speech was a lot more natural. So, highly recommend this course. The link will be down below. The next trick, can versus can't. Here we have a very unique situation. So, T in the word can't, wouldn't, shouldn't, and couldn't. This T is super, super important because it changes the meaning of the whole sentence, because I can't help you with this. But the problem is, Americans don't really pronounce this T in the end. They say, I can't do this. And the only way for you to understand whether they meant can't with a T or can without a T is to pay attention to which word they stress when they talk about something. Let's look at a couple of examples. I can't help you. So I say, I can't help you. But because I'm emphasizing can't, that really means I can't help you. I cannot help you. I can't help you. But on the other hand, if I want to say, I can help you, meaning that I'm able to help you, then I'm emphasizing the word help. I can't help you versus I can help you. I can't help you. I can help you. So again, the rule here is when you emphasize that you're able to do something, you emphasize the verb. I can cook lasagna. But if you want to emphasize that you can't do something, you emphasize the word can't. I can't cook lasagna. Never done that before. Let's try another example so that you remember and understand correctly. My husband can drive a car. That means he's able to drive a car. My husband can't drive a car. He's unable to do that. Again, I'm kind of doing this over the top so you can hear the difference, but normally people just say, I can't do that. Nah, I'm unable to do that. That's it. Another tip. It's not going to relate to the way you pronounce words. It's just going to relate to the way you learn the language. So basically, what happens to me is that I know some words, but then people start using them in a context that I do not understand. So, whenever you don't understand something, Google the whole phrase. Because sometimes the whole phrase has a completely different meaning from what you expected. This happens because you knew only one meaning of the word that it's used in the phrase, and sometimes words have, 10 different meanings. There are a couple of resources that I just wanted to recommend. I would always use Urban Dictionary because, sometimes people are swearing at you or saying inappropriate things or just saying things that mean completely different things from what a normal dictionary would tell you. So, whenever I'm confused and whenever I feel that we are reading or engaging with something online or on social media that sounds informal, I would go to Urban Dictionary first and check what that means. Normally, I would get the right definition, because if I just Google this word on its own, I would get something really formal, and it wouldn't make sense. Another great website is called dopeopleSay.com. On that website, you'll also find words that people use in their everyday lives, and they might use them in completely different meanings than what the standard dictionary tells you. The next tip. When I started on YouTube in the US, I would say YouTube because British people say YouTube, and this is where I heard about this platform for the first time. I continued saying YouTube, and then, in London, the underground is called the Tube, and I just said tube all the time. People laughed at me, and I was like, why are they trolling me? YouTube is YouTube. Then I started watching more American vloggers and realized it's actually YouTube. So the thing is, in American English, in words like student, YouTube, duty, new, you would just say the sound oo instead of saying you. So instead of saying student, it's kind of British, right? Kind of what we were taught in school. Student is what people say in the US. A student. The word ain't is another one. Is he coming? No, he ain't coming. Max, he ain't coming. I ain't gonna do that. Just ain't gonna do that. Have you heard that before? Of course you have. I've heard it many, many times. So, first of all, ain't is this word that kind of replaces a lot of different things. Am not, is not, has not. So, basically, if you don't want to learn grammar, you can just use ain't all the time. But it is super spoken, like spoken English. You can't really use it in an interview or in an essay. Not all native speakers use it, but it is pretty common to say, "He ain't doing that." So when you hear it next time, you know it's replacing either is not, has not, or am not. And you can also use it in your speech if you want. The next word you need to know and absolutely use, it's spoken, but it's super useful. Appreciate it. And please pay attention to my mouth. It's not appreciated, it's appreciated. For example, your server brings you food at a restaurant. Instead of saying thank you, which is kind of basic, and of course you can say that, you say appreciate it. Or somebody gives you a favor. There's a long line and you're with a baby. Somebody tells you, "Oh, get in front of the line and get your coffee faster than we do." You say appreciate it. This is just the way to speed up your speech and sound more American. I know a lot of examples here. By the way, guys, I'm not a native speaker. I live in the US, and a lot of things I notice in my everyday life are very American because I live in California. Pretty sure if you travel to other countries, you would notice different things. But I think American English is the most popular version of English, so we're learning it here. The next one is going to blow your mind. No, yeah, you have two words, no and yeah, which actually mean yes. Do you want coffee? No, yeah. No, yeah. I didn't know it existed in my native language, Russian, but it exists in American English in California. A lot of people also say yeah, no, which is again two words, and this phrase actually means no. Do you want to go out tonight? Yeah, no, I don't want to. I'd rather stay home. Yeah, no means no. No, yeah means yes. I know, super confusing. Just write it down. But also, you will notice based on the intonation, based on visual signs, you would understand whether it's a yes or no. Don't be sorry, be afraid. When you want to say, "I'm sorry," but in reality, you did nothing wrong, you actually say, "I'm afraid." Like, for example, "Oh my God, listen to this, guys. This is super crazy. We're trying to buy a car right now. This is the real thing that's happening right now. We are trying to buy a car in the US. We're trying to buy a new car, a Cadillac. There are no cars, and because there is a chip shortage, and chips that are manufactured at a particular plant somewhere in China had to stop due to coronavirus. Now all new cars require this chip. That's why I've been waiting for my Tesla for 10 months. And now we're trying to get a Cadillac because we want a big family car, and it's unavailable. You have to wait for like 4 months if you're lucky. So, we come to this car dealership and I tell them I want to get a Cadillac. And instead of saying, "I'm sorry, miss, we don't have any Cadillacs available," they tell me, "I'm afraid we don't have anything available." Because, like, they haven't done anything wrong. They don't need to apologize. So they say, "I'm afraid we don't have anything available." Or just to give you a couple more examples, so you understand how the phrase is used. Sometimes you talk to a person and they explain some concept, and you're like, "I'm afraid I don't understand it." Because you're not making a mistake by not understanding what they mean, but you say, "I'm afraid I don't get it," or "I'm afraid I don't understand it." And I hear this phrase, "I'm afraid," a lot. Normally, when people don't have anything left, like Cadillacs or chocolate, they say, "I'm afraid we don't have any chocolate left." I'm afraid we don't have any apartments available. I'm afraid we don't have any tables until February 2023. Like America is this crazy country where people, I guess, have a lot of money, and you have to compete for basically everything. We competed to get this house. We're competing to buy a car. I don't know. Just, sharing some reality with you guys. Well, this is probably particular to Silicon Valley. Probably different in other places, but Silicon Valley is super competitive. Okay, let's move on to the next tip on how to sound like a native speaker. Have you ever heard a phrase or something similar to this? They are a great doctor. I'm glad I found them. But they are a great doctor? So, we understand we're actually talking about a person, but we are referring to that person as they or them. Why is this happening? Basically, when you don't know the gender of the person, you can refer to that person as they or them. They are a great doctor. They are a great teacher, whatever. Also, because of this thing, especially in California, like, for example, people here can choose their gender and can change their gender, and sometimes they don't want any gender at all. And you might have noticed that sometimes on Instagram, people ask to be referred to as he, she, or they. So when they choose they, that means they are gender neutral, and they don't want to be associated with male or female. My pronouns are they, them, but no worries. Yeah, you refer to them as they. So don't get confused. It's actually a single person, just the way we refer to that person. Also, again, in California, there are a lot of gender-neutral restrooms. There are certain rules. For example, you don't have to have a gender on your birth certificate anymore, because you might decide later when you grow up, you can have a different attitude to what's happening. But I also see how it's beneficial for some people. Again, something that's happened in California, again, sounds really weird for me as a Russian. We don't have something like that in Russia, but this is a reality here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video up to the very end. I hope it was useful, and I hope you practiced your pronunciation all along. I hope that now, whenever you listen to a song by an American, you'll be like, oh, I know what she just said. I know what he just sang because Liza taught me. If you know you subscribed, hit the red button down below, and I will see you very soon in my next videos. Bye.